Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind of Sai Marie. I'm your host, Sai Marie Johnson, and today we are diving into the intricate building and deep emotional resonance of one of this year's most compelling reads. Joining us today is the author of the Ruby Cradle, James L. Hill. James, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Sai. That's an interesting name you got.
Thank you. So I want to jump right in. Looking at the journey of your latest work, what was the specific spark or personal experience that compelled you to write the Ruby Cradle?
The Ruby Cradle is the second book in the Gemstone series. So when I wrote The Emerald Lady, I realized the story was bigger than what was going to be contained in just one novel. So the Emerald Lady took place in the golden age of piracy, and it contained mermaids. It was a mythology between mermaids, men, and dragons. And I realized when I was writing The Emerald Lady that I was in the middle of the story. So I had to go back and tell why the dragons are the enemies, why the mermaids and the men are joined together. And so that the first book inspired the second, The Ruby Cradle.
That makes sense. So that's a powerful starting point. In your writing, how do you manage the delicate balance of pacing to keep readers engaged without rushing the emotional development?
It's all about storytelling. If you rush to get to the ending, you leave out so much of the emotional impact and the characterizations and what the characters are going through. And if you spend too much time trying to give everybody every nuance of the character and their background and their history and how they're feeling in this moment or that moment, you slow the story down too much. So it's kind of like a balance that you must work out between telling the story, getting the actions and the scenes and what's actually happening to the people, as well as how that affects the people that's in the situation. It's a very delicate balancing act sometimes. Sometimes you'll go too far to the one and then you have to reel that back in. And you'll see when you're writing a story, did the character come out as real or are they just flat two-dimensional cutouts of what a person would be? If that's the case, you need to then dive deeper into the character.
So, your protagonists often face heavy internal conflicts. How do you build their personality blueprints to make them relatable to the reader?
Every character is a person to me. They are real as much as anybody else in this world. I live with these people. I talk to these people day in and day out while I'm writing. And sometimes even after I'm finished a book, I still have these characters living with me. And so the blueprint is what this person is in that particular time. I live in that time. I exist in that time. So I'm going through it with them. And therefore, that's how they become real people to other people. You got to believe in your characters if you want other people to believe in them too.
So, secrets play a major role in the narrative. How do hidden truths challenge trust and dynamics of your secondary characters?
I have a background in government work and in banking. And so in government work, we have a saying of, how did I say it? I forget it now. It would leave me now. But anyway, it's a need to know. That's what the saying is. That's part of it. You only know what you need to know. And so there's always secrets involved in government work. Like I can be working on one thing, you can be working on something. We're both working on the same thing together, but you don't have to know my part and I don't have to know your part. And so those secrets that we keep to ourselves are very important, and we'll have to expose maybe some of what we want you to know, but not knowing everything, like not knowing everything behind it, of what drove that action. I just need you to know that that action is going to occur and you need to do your part when it comes up. And so in the Ruby Cradle, Apollonia, she wants to bring Jock and the men of his town to go fight the dragons. But she knows that by the time that Apollonia and Jock are in this time period, they don't believe in dragons anymore. It's all a myth and you know, foregone lore. So to just turn around and tell them, hey, we're going up the mountain to fight a dragon, she know first of all, they won't believe her. And second of all, they won't do it. Everybody knows that dragons are, of course, killers. So she can't tell them everything. And so, but by the time she gets him up the mountain to face the dragon, she knows at that point she's gonna have to tell him, "Look, this is a dragon, and this is what we're up against." And at that point, it's too late for them to turn around too.
So it's 2026 and the world is obviously changing fast. Did you find that any current global events or digital culture influence that might have shaped the way you wrote about character privacy?
Yeah, because a lot of stuff that you find that's happening is not always what you see. And so what you think you know is not always what the truth is. Sometimes the truth is hidden from you. Sometimes it's not so much hidden, but you don't have access to all of what's there, all of what is to be known. And so as we look at today, because in today's world, we got a lot of news that comes out. And it comes out so quickly that we don't get all the facts or not all the facts are correct. So if you go back in time to when the news didn't travel like that, and so you hear a story from one person, that story could be several years old, or that story could be completely wrong because of how many times it had changed hands before it got to you. And so we can use today's idea of how fast news travels in that you may not be getting the right story, but it travels so fast that by the time the truth catches up to it, you already heard 3 or 4 different stories, and then you have to decide which is the truth.
So your style is incredibly evocative. Do you see your story unfolding like a film when you're writing, or do you focus more on your internal prose?
A little bit of each. Actually, I think we all see our stories playing like a movie in our heads. And as the movie plays, we fill in some of the darker parts with uh, how we would see things that does not show up on the screen. So we see these actions play out and these different things play out, but like in a movie, you have the voiceover that tells you what the person is thinking, and as you're writing it, you say, "Oh, you know what? This is going to be an important part, but I can't tell it yet." So, and at times I'll write stuff in the story, skip a couple of lines and then go back up and keep writing because I know that point is going to come up later and I want to make sure it relates back to where I'm at in the story now. So I'll write paragraphs or something that are not gonna I'm not gonna need till later in the story. But I thought of it now, so I put it down and it's going to therefore play back to a previous part of the story. And then when you read that part, you're like, yeah, yeah, okay, I understand. I know where that's coming from now, that kind of thing.
So, was there a particular plot twist in the Ruby Cradle that was especially rewarding to write?
Oh, yeah. Bella is sent to her grandmother, the evil queen, who had been deposed and exiled to learn about the dragons and how they captured the dragons in the first place. A little bit of the twist and what's that? It's that her father was the one who sent her, and the father the one that the evil queen really tortured. And he was okay, and he was pushing her mom, the mermaid, to go ahead and send her. So Shira didn't want to send her to her mother, but she knew how evil she was. And the father kept saying, no, no, and he's a man, of course, kept saying, no, no, she'll be all right. What other choice do we have? And so you find out later in the story, there's a nice little plot twist that comes up toward the end of the story. And it was really great to write. I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to ruin it for people. But when you get to that point, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it's really satisfying to see what the father had in mind.
So, what is your personal philosophy on the perfect ending? Do you prefer to tie up every loose thread or leave the reader with a lingering question?
Well, when I write series, I want the plot to actually end in each book. I want to tell a complete story. So whatever happens in the Ruby Cradle will be done in the Ruby Cradle. But then there are parts of that will lead you to think, but something else must be coming. Something more, like at the end of Tell, the Emerald Lady, you knew that, okay, they had the daughter Isabella, the mom had been exiled, but it left the world in such a state that you knew there had to be something else coming down the road. There had to be another story because now all the dragons had been released and if they were the bad guys in the story, in the world. What are you gonna do about that? You just released them all. So that's the idea. The story was told, tell was told that it was ended, but you knew something else had to come afterward. And then you get to the Ruby Cradle. And now the Ruby Cradle, you find out why they didn't like the dragons, what was all what how did they capture them, and all that kind of stuff. And then you come to the end of the Ruby Cradle when all of this story had been told, but you know that can't be the end of the saga because they have to recapture the dragons or do something with the dragons. The dragons are now wrecking the world once again and wreaking havoc across the world. In fact, they're even worse than what they were before.
So you have a unique way of exploring human potential. How does your personal philosophy on growth bleed into the themes of your fiction?
Well, over time, everybody beliefs matures. Let's put it that way. What you believe as a child or as a kid or as a young adult, your life experiences not necessarily changes it, but it ages it, and you get to see things in a different light. You get to see people that you knew and that you believe one way or another, like your parents or your teachers, and these people that at one age you see them in one particular light. As you grow up and you have your own experiences, you tend to start seeing them in a different light. And so when you write your characters, you must realize people do not stay the same. They don't, basically, they don't change, but there's minute changes in their different opinions. And they may, what they once held as gospel truth, they now know is only their own opinion.
So, regarding your story process, how do you rewrite the scripts for your characters when they start taking the story in a direction that you didn't expect?
Sometimes I let them go with it. It depends on how far afield we go in the story. It's like as they go along in the story, I always keep in mind, can I get back to the original plot? Because I'm a plotter. So I plot out the entire story before I go start to write the first word. I know where I'm going. I know what's supposed to happen, everything. And then the characters take over and they write the story and we follow this one and follow that one. And then if this character, some characters coming out of nowhere and have their own story to tell. But if it takes me too far to where I'm saying, you know what, I'm going to have to go way down over here to get back to the original story. And I think my reader going to go with me there. Am I taking them too far away from the story that they're not going to remember what we was actually talking about? Then I'll cut it back and say, well, wait a second. You can't have that much to say in this story. Maybe you'll get another story somewhere else, but in this story, we can only go but so far. And then I redirect them back into the main story. But there's always subplots and stuff in the story that you need to work in because every character has its own story, but every character can't tell their full story all the time. You have to make that distinction of whose story are we telling and how much of that story need to be told.
So, looking back, how has your approach to the first draft changed since you first began your journey as a novelist?
Well, I first started writing novels. I would write a couple of chapters, two, three, four chapters. Then I go back and I would read those two, three, four chapters from beginning to end, and then start writing the next couple of chapters. Then go back to the beginning and read through all of that again until I got to the point where I stopped and then write again. Now I write straight through to the end and I go back and then I start filling in and rewriting and making changes as I go along. Both ways work. One way takes a whole lot longer than the other. The first way took a lot longer to do it because I'm going back, rereading everything I wrote, making changes, this, that, and the other thing, and then going on from there. Now I get the whole bare bones of the story down. The whole plot line is laid out, and then I can go back and tweak parts that I know need to be fixed as I go along.
So, for aspiring authors who are feeling stuck in the middle of their manuscript, what is your best advice for finding the story's heartbeat again?
Do exactly what I just said. Go back to the very beginning and don't read it with the idea of thinking, what am I going to write next? Just read it. Read what you wrote as if you were a new reader. Read what you wrote. And as you get toward the point where you're stuck, ideas will have come from what you wrote before. It will remind you of what you were thinking of when you first started your novel. And also new ideas will come to you as you read through the novel. and you figure, oh, this is a better idea. Oh, I got another idea here. And therefore, you become unstuck.
So, is the journey of your current characters a closed chapter, or do you feel there are more secrets in the world of the Ruby Cradle left to explore?
It is both a closed chapter. Like I said, I like every story to end, but it's also more to come. There's another book coming. This is going to be a trilogy. As I was writing the Emerald Lady, I figured I'm going to wind up in a trilogy because we went back in time to get back to what would be their present time, and now we will have to go forward from then. So Emerald Lady was the golden age of piracy. The Ruby Cradle actually talks about the golden age of kingdoms and castles. And now we're coming back at the end of the Ruby Cradle. You find that we are back in the present, and now we are going to have to go forward from what is known as the modern age. We started with the Crimean War, which is actually kind of like the beginning of the modern age. And so we're going to go forward from there in the next book.
So, finally, for the creative who feels their voice might be too niche, what is your advice for finding that sweet spot where unique storytelling meets a broad audience?
Write the story you want to write. Your audience will find you. Don't try to write to an audience. Try to write to a story. Tell your story the best you can. And when you've done that and you wrote the best story you can write, people will find you. You might have to go looking for them, but they'll find you.
James, it has been an absolute pleasure exploring the depths of your work today. Thank you for sharing your mind with us.
Thank you for having me. It was quite the pleasure.
To our listeners, you can find the Ruby Cradle online and in bookstores now. I will also have a link in the show notes if you would like to go pick it up. Until next time, remember the mind is the most important story that we'll ever tell. We'll see you on the next episode of The Mind of Sai Marie.